As Thanksgiving and the holidays arrive while the year comes to a close, we're taking a look back at some of the most compelling conversations of 2023 on the Hidden Killers podcast.
This is an examination of the hidden human condition.
This is the Hidden Killers podcast
with Tony Bruschi.
Lori Daybell on trial this week. Jury selection getting underway. So that means we're going to be talking a lot about the psychological state of things in this specific case. Joni Johnson is joining me today. She's a clinical and forensic psychologist, licensed private investigator, and one of my favorite guests to talk about these sort of things with. Let's just kind of start here because a lot of the speculation is going to be going around, okay, who's the ringleader in this thing between Chad and Lori Daybell? Are they in this 50-50? Is one of them kind of prompting the other? What's your thoughts from the outside looking in with what we know thus far?
You know, my sense, Tony, is that there's a kind of an old saying in psychology that the sum is greater than the whole of its parts. Just kind of meaning that when you have two independent things that come together, they create something that's even more than if you had them separately. And that is really my sense of what's happened here. That I've seen so much debate about, okay, was Chad the puppet master? Was Lori the puppet master? Would this have not happened if Chad hadn't met Lori or vice versa? I've definitely heard a lot of arguments that said Lori just, did this kind of Breaking Bad thing when she met Chad Daybell, that she was just this upstanding citizen. And if she hadn't met Chad, that, she would never have gotten involved in these things. And I think you could make an argument for that. I think you could also make an argument that the reverse is also true. Because, we have this kind of alleged henchman, which is, Lori's brother, who has this history of committing violence on her behalf. And so my sense is that it really was like this kind of synergy that, I don't know that Chad would have been involved in criminal activity, certainly in murder, if he hadn't met Lori, who, we don't know her personal history. There's no indication that she has any personal history of violence. But, when you look at some of her family members, certainly her brother, and then I know her father was arrested at one point, I think, for assault.
Yeah, and the tax evasion throughout their entire lives.
Yeah, there's the whole tax evasion, and then apparently he did. Her father assaulted her sister's husband. When they were going through a divorce, and so there certainly is some hint, or there's a risk factors for violence in her family, and so I do feel like, in some respects, that that there is this kind of synergy between the two of them. And I think it brought out the absolute worst in both of them. So I don't know that there's a puppet master here. I mean, we can argue that certainly Chad provided some kind of religious framework, right, for justifying some of the things that they did.
Yeah.
But I think there are probably a lot of people who were influenced by that would never have resorted to violence under any circumstances. Lori, obviously, I don't think was one of them.
Where Lori would be more prone to actually do something than Chad.
I don't know. Again, I don't know that we can say, is Lori more prone? I think we can say that there seems to be more violence in her family history.
Okay.
That there was, I know at one point she was at a church meeting and she talked about having this kind of murderous heart toward one of her ex-husbands, and that she felt like it basically had come down to either she was going to murder him or she was going to go to church every day.
Yeah.
So I think that there is some indication that Lori had some risk factors for violence, at least in terms of inducing others to commit violence on her behalf before she ever met Chad. And then there's the issue of, again, when, Chad was there, he was already kind of gathering these kind of cult following, apparently, at the time. And I think the two of them together, it really was like, again, it was like creating a different entity between the two of them.
It was a perfect storm, really, for these specific personalities to all mesh and mingle. Do you think Chad got himself in too deep with someone that he didn't realize the potential of what they were capable of doing or what they may want to do? I went through this last week, and we did a dramatic reading for fun of the Chad and Lori Daybell love letters, or the texts that Chad wrote to Lori, and just dramatically went through them and analyzed them as well as I was doing that. But what was really interesting is this super obsession with her looks. It was every other sentence, this body of a goddess, the this or that, the this and this, and she's got 16 layers of clothes on, and he got her down to 2, and it's nuts. I mean, it really is an insane text string, which we're running at 6 p.m. Central every day on the podcast channel. But it was this thing where, was Chad kind of this doofus that he got this woman that was above his level, I guess, socially speaking, in terms of looks, and then really kind of, he was just going to stick around and do whatever he thought possible to keep this woman with him. And the bonus that she goes along with his stuff, but to go as far as it went, did it just get out of control for him, you think?
Well, I mean, everybody, I'm sure you've talked to people that, who have opinions across the board.
Yeah.
My sense, Tony, is that there are no victims here.
No.
Other than people, other than Lori and Chad. So do I think Chad was this doofus who kind of went along with Lori? No, I don't.
No? Okay.
I don't. I think that, I think this was a partnership.
Yeah.
In every sense of the word. And I think it was, you talked about this kind of meshing of personalities. I do think that they really found each other, and that, it was almost like one complemented the other one in the worst possible way. So we don't know who suggested what.
Sure.
We do know that, again, Chad provides this framework of dark and light and zombies, and, you've got to kill their what is it? Their spirit stuck or gone, and you've got to release them by killing them and all this kind of stuff. I don't think Lori made that up. I think Chad made that up.
Yeah.
And that might have been a good framework or rationalization for doing some of the things that they did. I think it was. Now, the bigger question is, how much did Chad believe this?
That's what I wonder, because I sometimes wonder with some of that stuff did it intend to go as far as it did with killing the kids? I mean, I could almost see Chad introducing some of these things and then being the savior, being the one that in terms of their ideology gets the demons out of the kids or whatever, and then they're all good. But maybe it goes too far, or maybe he didn't want to have kids, and this was a way to get rid of them too. It's really hard to know, and I am curious about that. What are your thoughts on them still believing this doctrine of bullshit?
Well, I think, my sense in a lot of respects, and again, we don't know for sure, but my sense is that in some respects, Lori believed it more than Chad did.
Yeah.
Even though he was the kind of the mastermind, at least in terms of the framework, right? The religious framework that he kind of provided. We don't know if she had been, it very well could be that Lori was the mastermind for implementing some of these things or suggesting that they implement some of these things. But again, I don't see him as any kind of, could he have been obsessed with her looks? Yes, he could have been. And apparently from the love letters, he was.
Yeah.
Okay, what does that mean? It doesn't mean anything in terms of potential for violence.
No.
And how do we explain? Okay, he is obsessed with Lori's looks. Let's say, okay, yeah, that's kind of seems to be a given to some extent here, based on what we know. How does that fit in with his wife dying?
Well, I that's a good question, but I think sometimes you have men that will end up staying with a crazy person strictly on their looks. Like the rest of it's out there, but it's amazing what men will sacrifice sometimes in terms of sanity to be with the pretty girl. And that's what I'm wondering, if there is an element of that at play here. Not the whole thing by any means, but I could see it having more weight than the average person would think about it looking at this whole scenario. How does it play into the wife dying? I just think he maybe thought he got someone who was better, and for some reason didn't have much of a quorum about her dying or whatever was going to end up happening to the ex-wife. I think there's a level of peace that both of them had with people dying around them that served no purpose to them, essentially.
Well, I think the interesting part of it is, and I think that's what's so difficult sometimes in these cases, is you kind of look and you can go, okay, here's somebody who, on the scale of physical attractiveness, I'm not sure many people would give Chad a 10.
Sure.
Or maybe even a 5 or 7 or whatever. Lori, I think most people would rate her higher, right, on the physical attractiveness scale.
Yeah.
Is it possible that he, felt like he won the lottery in terms of, here is this beautiful woman who all of a sudden is so attracted to him. He is infatuated with her. He's infatuated with the idea that she's in love with him, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. We can all take that to a certain extent and go, yeah. We know people who've thrown away their long-term marriages for, a 20-year-old or, had a midlife crisis and thrown things that were valuable away and those kinds of things. that's kind of where it stops, though.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, okay, what kind of person would then murder people over it?
Yeah.
And not just one, but be a part of this kind of, systematic extermination of children, of spouses, of who knows who. Yeah. So I think that's where it just kind of like, we can say, is it a part of it in terms of him being so infatuated? Yeah, I think Lori was equally infatuated, not necessarily by Chad's looks, but by his religious fervor, his conviction, his end times, which I think she had kind of embraced the end times before she met Chad. So, we can certainly understand that attraction may have been different for each one and been very strong and obsessive, et cetera. But at some point we go, okay, the frame of it being this kind of, I'll do anything to keep you, it kind of breaks down.
It does. Yeah.
Who would do that?
Well, Chad.
But exactly. Or Lori.
Or
right?
Lori.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is an examination of the hidden human condition.
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast.
The Hidden Killers Podcast.
With Tony Bruski.
There's more to come with Joni. Stick around, press subscribe wherever you download podcasts. You don't miss any of that. We're going to take a little gander into the accusations of that bizarre relationship with Lori and her now dead brother, Alex. The one where they dry hump in front of friends. It's coming up. Press subscribe wherever you download podcasts so you don't miss any of that. I'm Tony Bruski. Stay with us.